Stick this in your ear.
The number one internet shock radio network.
Shock me with that deviant behavior.
Renegade Talk Radio.
All right, we haven't forgotten what's going on with these House races. 4 are still up for grabs. I'll tell you what's going on with that. But let's also not forget what they did in Wisconsin, where Eric Hovde was leading the race the entire time. And at 3:30 in the morning, Tammy Baldwin got perfect numbers of votes in a ballot drop that allowed her to win that Senate seat. Eric Hovde has come out and conceded the race, but not that there wasn't a steal.
9 months ago, I entered the race for the U.S. Senate because I love our country, and I am deeply concerned about its direction. The 4 principal issues that propelled me to run were my concerns about the U.S. government's debt crisis and excessive spending, which have put our country's financial security at risk and sparked the worst inflation in 40 years. I'm also troubled by our domestic security, impacted by the defund the police movement and the lack of control at our southern border. International security was another concern, as the policies of the Biden administration have led to conflicts breaking out worldwide. Lastly, as I've repeatedly expressed, I'm very worried about the political divisions and rhetoric that are tearing our country apart. These issues, along with other problems like our failing healthcare system and lack of affordable housing, motivated me to step away from my businesses and private life to enter this race. I'm proud of the campaign we ran and that I focused on issues instead of personal attacks. The results from election night were disappointing, particularly in light of the last-minute absentee ballots that were dropped in Milwaukee at 4 a.m., flipping the outcome. There are many troubling issues around these absentee ballots and their timing, which I addressed in my last statement. I have heard from numerous supporters urging me to challenge the election results. However, without a detailed review of all the ballots and their legitimacy, which will be difficult to obtain in the courts, a request for a recount would serve no purpose, because you will just be recounting the same ballots regardless of their integrity. As a result, and my desire to not add to political strife through a contentious recount, I've decided to concede the election. I am proud that we received 1.64 million votes, more than any Republican in Wisconsin history, aside from President Trump's total on Tuesday night. Furthermore, if not for Democratic operatives placing a phony American First candidate on the ballot to deceive voters and siphon off over 28,000 votes, I would have won this race. Democratic operatives also supported a Libertarian candidate through mail and other sources without his knowledge to strip votes away from me. Are these actions to deceive and mislead voters strengthening and protecting our democracy? Any fair-minded person would say no. Obviously, the outcome is not what I had hoped for, but I do not regret entering this race. I'm passionate about our country and the future we are leaving our children and grandchildren. The issues I have raised have resonated with many. I have also had the opportunity to travel extensively throughout our beautiful state and meet so many wonderful people. We in Wisconsin are truly blessed to call this state home. What is disheartening are the tactics used against me in this race. Before I even entered, protesters were sent to my home. Phony lawsuits were launched against my companies. Millions were spent on ads making false claims about where I'm from and live, what I've said, and what I've done. Senator Baldwin's campaign focused on getting voters to hate me, even claiming I was a Californian who wanted to take senior Social Security away, pass a national abortion ban, and ban beer. none of which are remotely true. Sadly, our current political system is broken.
All right,
Instead
so
of candidates debating...
Habdi handles it with class, but... days until Inauguration Day. It is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. This is the InfoWars War Room. We've got a lot of political news for you today. A lot of developments in Washington, D.C., a lot of developments with the Trump campaign, or should I say, the president-elect's cabinet's picks now. The campaign is over. Now he's picking his administration one by one in rapid pace. So we got a big update on that. And we got a couple very important guests today as well with some breaking news. But let's just get this out of the way because I told you we'd be following these House races. So it's now down to 4 that technically are still in the balance. And that is our Iowa District 1. It's ludicrous they haven't called it, but my guess is they're probably going to steal that seat. The fact that they haven't called it for the Republican right now tells me eventually they're going to find some ballot dump, and it's going to have just the right number of votes to put the Democrat ahead of the Republican at the buzzer. And so I'm very concerned about that. There's a situation in Alaska that's a bit of a mystery with the ranked choice voting, but the Republican candidate is 10,000 or so ahead, so it shouldn't even be a race, but they haven't called that. And then the 2 seats in California that we've been monitoring, one, it's pretty much confirmed that they're already going to steal, with the Republican leading the entire time until just a couple days ago, and then they flipped it. Amazing how that works. Still counting ballots weeks after the election. How is that even real? How is that not crime? Well, it is. It is crime. And then the second California seat that we've been watching, the most recent drop of ballots has just been counted, and now the Democrat has closed the gap, and it's only a couple hundred votes. What was once over 1,000 vote lead, thousands of votes ahead, the Republican was, a week after the election. Now 2 weeks after the election, they keep counting votes, and now the Democrat is about to overtake that lead too. You could have a situation where the Republicans have a single seat advantage at this rate. Now, again, the Alaska race should be over. The Iowa race should be over. And those 2 California House seats, (41 and 13). Or no, it was 45 and 13, excuse me. 45 and 13 should have been called, but they've kept counting ballots, and now the Democrats are about to take those seats. Unbelievable. So you could have a situation with a 1-seat advantage in the House for Republicans, which is almost unbelievable. Some of these results in districts that Trump won, but that the Democrats flipped, or in districts like we saw in multiple California districts, specifically 45-13, where the Republican is ahead the entire time. And then right at the buzzer, the Democrat gets just the right amount of votes to win. Always for Democrats, too. You notice that? You never see Republicans pull from behind with 30 seconds left on the clock and then hit the buzzer beater to win the race. You notice that? You've never seen it one time. Not once. Happens to Democrats all the time. Happens to them in Senate races. Happens to them in House races. Happens to them in presidential races. But a Republican? Not even once. At any level. Always the Democrats. And really, when you consider Murkowski and Collins, who have already made comments basically saying they're going to really look into Matt Gaetz before they confirm him. They won't come right out and say it, but that's the context of their recent statements. They don't want to confirm Matt Gaetz. So really, you have a one-seat advantage, you could even argue, in the Senate as well, because Collins and Murkowski, who knows who they'll vote? Who knows the way they'll vote? Who knows if they'll confirm? And now you've got the Democrat propaganda media all across all the networks and the local news running with the story that, oh, Trump barely even won the popular vote. And it looks like he's not even going to have 50% of the voters. There's no mandate. There's only a one-seat advantage in the House. Trump barely even won the popular vote. There's no mandate. There's no MAGA mandate. There's no MAGA agenda. Amazing. Amazing watching it all play out. So they could steal 4 seats at the buzzer. The fact they haven't called these races tells me that's their plan. 1-seat majority in the House. And then with Collins and Murkowski maybe going full anti-Trump, I mean, who knows? 1-seat advantage in the Senate. So it really is a shame. It really is a shame how they have kneecapped what was an incredible victory for Donald Trump, for the populist movement, for MAGA. And they've kneecapped it by rigging House races with Republican senators that will probably be Democrats in the next 2 years. And then John Thune, who already is not all the way on board with the MAGA agenda. Oh, he says he is, but no. No, we know better than that. In fact, since becoming the Senate Majority Leader, he's spoken with more fervor in support for Israel than he has for MAGA. And we've got that evidence for you, too. So that's where we're at today, ladies and gentlemen. The good news is Trump's administration, his picks continue to be good. They're complaining at his education secretary pick, Linda McMahon. They don't like that. She's not qualified. Her resume isn't that great when it comes to education. I don't care. When the Department of Education was formed, every year since then, I think it was 1974, we were number one. America was number one in public education. We've fallen off the map now. Many schools, high schools, middle schools, they have graduates that can't read at grade level, can't do math at grade level, haven't even mastered the English language. But hey, let's talk about how great the Department of Education is. And that's what it is. It's not about education. It's about the Department of Education. It's about the federal bureaucracy. It's about the management class, not the actual education. That has failed miserably. And that's what they're saying. Trump's cabinet picks just don't have the experience. They don't have the resume. They don't come from D.C. Yeah. I mean, we could just play clips of Linda McMahon, Vince McMahon's wife, when she was the WWE, WWF celebrity. Oh, there's just Glenn Jacobs, the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, giving now the education secretary a pile driver. Who had that coming? Who could have seen that coming? Monday Night Raw, it was probably like 1997. Monday Night Raw. And you have Kane, who is now the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, giving Linda McMahon, who is now the education secretary, a tombstone pile driver. Right into politics. So as we're in the final days of the Biden administration, right now the Senate is trying to ram through, Chuck Schumer is trying to ram through as many judicial nominees as possible. The Democrats are trying to stack the courts. Well, this is what Donald Trump had to say about it. This is the exact quote. The Democrats are trying to stack the courts with radical left judges on their way out the door. Republican senators need to show up and hold the line. No more judges confirmed before Inauguration Day. And they're not showing up. And they haven't showed up. And they've dropped the ball royally. Multiple radical left judges have been confirmed. Ron DeSantis called out the Republican Party, specifically because this is affecting Florida and other states in the Southeast. So John Thune's leadership has already been a failure. Who's surprised by that? So Thune couldn't rally Republicans to block the nomination of these radical leftist judges that Schumer is ramming home. Thune can't even rally the next incoming session to get behind Trump's appointments and confirm them rapidly. Hasn't said a word about what happened in Wisconsin. Hasn't said a word about the escalation of war by the administration on its way out. So what is he doing then? What is John Thune doing? What is John Thune's item, agenda, issue, as he's now the leader, the majority leader in the Senate? What is it that John Thune is so concerned about? Let's see in clip 20.
Well, it's been over 13 months now since Hamas terrorists waged war against Israel, and for the past year plus, Democrats have struggled to support our ally Israel and has literally fractured the Democrat Party. For example, we are expecting tomorrow Senator Sanders to offer a resolution denying lethal aid to Israel.
Oh,
refusal
no.
to have
I'm
our
so upset.
allies back and the hesitation to call out anti-Semitism in our own country has consequences. It enables bad behavior and bad actors around the world, and it encourages others to abandon Israel in their time of need.
So he's now Chuck
you
Schumer.
have the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, and its prosecutor pursuing warrants against Israeli officials. That is outrageous, and it is unlawful. The ICC rogue actions are a threat to our ally Israel, and left unchecked, it could pose a threat to America in the future. I am calling on Leader Schumer to bring a bill to the floor sanctioning the ICC, which the House has already passed on a bipartisan basis. And if he refuses to act, our Senate Republican majority next year will. We will stand with Israel and make this and other supportive legislation a top priority in the next Congress.
Priority.
So to our allies in Israel and to the Jewish people around the world, My message to you is this: reinforcements are on the way. Senate Republicans reclaim the majority in 6 weeks, and when we do, we will make clear that the United States Congress stands squarely in Israel's corner, and we will help the Trump-Vance administration defend Israel and promote peace in the region.
How does that make you feel? That's depressing, isn't it? There, yeah, let's play the game. How much money has Thune taken from AIPAC? Oh, just $500,000. Just completely owned by the Israeli lobby. Just $500,000 for Thune's politics, for his vote, for his Senate seat. Isn't it depressing? Hey, I don't know, maybe the International Criminal Court and the UN are onto something about Netanyahu and the war crimes being committed in the Gaza Strip. Could that be the case? Oh, I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Doesn't matter. That's his top priority. Tell me, have you heard anything from John Thune about protecting Donald Trump and his life? Has Thune raised any questions about why there were multiple assassination attempts of Donald Trump? No, but the toothless, biteless International Criminal Court dealing with Netanyahu, poor Netanyahu. It's our top priority is Netanyahu. And he's going to be working with Schumer now to protect Israel and Netanyahu and take away your First Amendment right. Chuck Schumer says the defense bill is the only way to pass Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. So now they're going to shove. Do you remember they tried to do this? Was that earlier this year? And they criminalized the Bible. They criminalized the New Testament. They criminalized the story of Jesus' crucifixion. And they said it's anti-Semitic. And they tried to jam that in. And so now they're going to try to do it again. This is what these crooks do. This is what rats like Chuck Schumer do. This is what bought and paid for politicians like John Thune do. They're going to shove the Anti-Semitism Act. They're going to demonize speech that they view as anti-Semitic. Well, where do you draw the line on that? Oh, that's right. It's called the First Amendment. So can I not criticize Netanyahu? Is that a crime? Can I not criticize Israel? Is that a crime? Can I not criticize AIPAC? Is that a crime? Can I read the New Testament in my house? Is that a crime? Can I watch the Passion of the Christ? Is that a crime? No, we have to shove this into the defense bill. Hey, we need defense. We need to protect our borders. We need to protect our allies. We need these weapons. And yeah, we're gonna criminalize anti-Semitism. Disgusting. And it's all because your politicians are bought and paid for by the Israeli lobby. It's disgusting. So, John Thune, already a miserable failure. Nothing to support Trump and his nominees. No commitment to recess appointments. Doesn't talk about protecting Trump from the multiple assassination attempts, but don't worry. He will use his bully pulpit, and he will go to Congress, and he will go to the media on the Hill, and he will stand there tall and proud about how much he loves Israel and Netanyahu. Disgusting. Are you the senator of Israel? Do you live in Israel? That's what you get from Thune. Already a complete failure. Already spitting in our eye. Whatever, dude. See, that's the problem. is pretty much every senator is owned by the Israeli lobby. So they're all in on it. New candidate emerges in crowded field as possible replacement of Vance's Ohio seat. That is attorney Mahik Cook. She's been a legal surrogate for Trump. She's been a sports agent. She's part of the Women for Trump Support Coalition. And so she does have a little bit of momentum behind her there. I wonder if this isn't going to come down to who Trump wants. And she does know Trump, at least somewhat. But I think ultimately DeWine will be forced to bend to Trump's will on that pick. That is, if he wants to be reelected. Oh, speaking of Israel, how could we forget that hack of the ethics report on Matt Gaetz that was total BS? It was yet another Israeli intelligence blackmail operation. The tangled tale of the Israeli consulate and the Matt Gaetz case. The story of the Israeli consulate staffer. One of the many only in Florida aspects of the Matt Gaetz sex crimes investigation. And they're saying like he had sex on like a ping pong table or an air hockey table. I mean, so another Israeli intelligence operation. Is that to blackmail our politicians? Is that what Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about yesterday? When she said it wasn't just Epstein? Is that what she was talking about? What was she talking about? Bunch of crooks. Bunch of bought and paid for political crooks. But yet another challenge we face as Americans to drain the swamp and end the corruption. All right, we have a bunch of geopolitical news to cover. We have an update on the future of border security and Laken Riley's murderer, how it all ties together. So we got all these things coming up. Remember, folks, the brand new monster truck raffle is live right now at the AlexJonesStore.com. 10 times entries with every purchase at the AlexJonesStore.com. Whether it's the hats, whether it's the shirts, whether it's the one-of-a-kind knives, whether it's the health supplements and drink mixes, 10 times entries on every dollar spent, and you are entered to win the Tremor F-250 Ford Diesel plus 10K cash. Don't forget about becoming a member of the VIP club at thealexjonesstore.com/VIP.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
A few weeks ago, when I saw Elon Musk in Pennsylvania with Trump at Butler, and he had that dark MAGA hat on, I said, we've got to have our own. And we've come out with it. Yeah, we can put one out that, just says Make America Great Again, and that's available at thealexjonesstore.com. But I personally like this one. Murdered out, it fits great, and it funds the InfoWar and supports President Trump. And if you don't like Murdered Out, we got it white on black. So get yours right now, and a bunch of other great designs of hoodies and T-shirts and top-of-the-line supplements that all fund the Second American Revolution at thealexjonesstore.com. Let me show you a few more of these. Now that the FDA admits fluoride does lower your IQ and give you cancer and infertility, it's a great time to wear one of these beautiful hats, and it's a great way to start a conversation and warn people. Here's the classic Make America Great Again Murdered Out, and we've got the Save the Frogs, over 50 designs, all at thealexjonesstore.com, and it keeps us on air, and it spreads the word. Please go to alexjonesstore.com and get your Patriot gear.
The War Room. Infowars.com/show.
It's time to take a stand. This is the War Room
With Owen Schroyer.
Share this message right now at band.video.
Gin to a sunfish versus tequila, which would make the sunfish more aggressive? Nearly $1 million spent studying whether or not Japanese quail, if you give them cocaine, whether or not they're more sexually promiscuous. Was it one small step for man Or was it one small step for a man? And in the end, $750,000 later, they couldn't decide. Was it one step for man, one step for a man? $2 million for the construction of a kelp and shellfish nursery in Maine. $1.5 million to encourage video gaming in New York. We might be better off spending $1.5 million to discourage kids from playing video games. $388,000 for Columbia University. Be giving a rich university that has $13 billion any money. $249,000 for the Baltimore Symphony. Give money to all the symphonies and we'd make them part of government.
Actually, I'd probably prefer that. Let's fire the politicians, bring in the symphonies, and they can just play music all day. That's Rand Paul breaking down the wasteful spending that we have to deal with. Hopefully this will be taken care of with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. It's just insane. Hey, let's give sunfish tequila, and then let's give these sunfish gin. Who comes up with this garbage? It's all these Ivy League psychology graduates that just propose the most asinine studies that they can do. All these Ivy League graduates, let's study this, let's study that, and then they just get this government money to fund these studies that do nothing. Can you imagine these studies? Getting French quail high on cocaine. Let's not forget our famous Shrimpzilla on the treadmill. By the way, they've had multiple treadmills, as you can see here. Not just one treadmill, multiple treadmills. I mean, other than a pretty funny video, pretty much worthless stuff. Here's some more. Syrian national charged with diverting $9 million in U.S.-funded humanitarian assistance to a terrorist organization affiliated with Al-Qaeda. Nice. Nice. That beautiful U.S. Agency for International Deployment of Aid. Just great stuff. $9 million. Just throw it on top of the fraud. Throw it on top of the COVID fraud. Throw it on top of the military-industrial complex fraud. But if you're an American after the hurricane and you're struggling, well, you're just out of luck. We have no money for you, but we got more money for Ukraine. We got money for the World Bank. We got humanitarian aid for a Syrian national working with terrorists, but not you, the poor American living in a tent in North Carolina because your house was washed away and FEMA just wants to buy your land. We'll have more on that coming up, by the way. Today, Jose Ibarra, the illegal immigrant who killed Laken Riley, was found guilty of murder. So, again, this is the right way to go about this. And somebody needs to propose a bill, probably Marjorie Taylor Greene. No irony intended, but she's the only one with the balls to do it. The Laken Riley Act. Any politician or NGO that has aided and abetted in any financial aid, housing aid, or transportation aid in an illegal alien that has committed a crime will be charged with aiding and abetting in that crime. Very simple, and all of this stops. That's it. It can be a one-liner. I just gave you your one line for the Laken Riley Act. And you'll put an end to this nonsense overnight. Say, well, gee, there might be some Republicans involved in that too. Oh, I know. Yeah. I'm well aware. Oh, I'm aware that it was probably Greg Abbott that flew him to New York or bussed him to New York. I'm aware. He did it, not me. So shouldn't have done it. Should have sent him home, out of the country. Should have put him in a jail. Not my problem. That he aided and abetted in a woman's murder. Wonder how her family feels about all that. As they're now releasing the body cam videos when they showed up to tell her family that she had been murdered. Pretty tough to watch. Pretty tough to watch. So, yeah, you want to stop all these goofy-ass, fake tough politicians saying, we're sanctuary cities. We help illegal immigrants. We aren't going to help deport them. Okay, all right. So the next time an illegal immigrant commits a crime in your sanctuary city, you're getting charged with aiding and abetting that crime. See how tough you are then. See how much of an ideologue you are then. By the way, the Soros-appointed district attorney, Deborah Gonzalez, will not seek the death penalty against Laken Riley's killer. She says she's worried about collateral consequences to undocumented defendants. Oh, the poor non-citizens. The poor non-citizens, undocumented defendants. As if they deserve more rights, as if they deserve more legal protections. So undocumented is now like this hedge of protection against criticism, against punishment. Well, okay, how about everything's undocumented then? I was an undocumented person on January 6th. I can't be charged. How about that? How about a woman gets raped and the legal defense is this was just an undocumented sex partner? Oh, just an undocumented sex partner. Somebody robs a liquor store. It was an undocumented purchase. It's complete nonsense. But, this is Deborah Gonzalez. She's got her gay pride flag and her Harris Walls yard sign. Yeah. She loves the illegals. She's a big fan. So she's going to protect that non-citizen that murdered a citizen of Georgia. A brutal, torturous murder. And she's more concerned about him and his feelings as an undocumented. That's what they think about. Trump's border czar Tom Homan reveals new details of mass deportation plan, debunking frenzied liberal speculation. Yeah, and it's all this idea that it's going to become like a militarized state, as if the military isn't advanced and can't do targeted arrests or targeted apprehensions. I mean, give me a break. So that's exactly how it's going to be. And they're going to let the legal system play itself out. When they commit a crime, then they'll get pinged and they'll go take them back. So no, it's not going to be this crazy militarization of our cities or our streets. I mean, you might see some craziness in the sanctuary cities where there's tens of thousands of illegals all into one hotel. There might be some scenes there. And then he issues warning to cities that won't work with ICE for deportations. Don't cross that line. Tom Homan might actually do that. And if you interfere with an arrest or a deportation, then you'll get charged with a crime. And he hasn't outright said it yet, but he's basically hinted that that's what they're going to do, and they should. And they should. Greg Abbott, who's talked tough on border security, but not walked too much. They walk across the border here all the time. But he's back. He's all about it now. Texas plans to expand Rio Grande buoy border wall in anticipation of migrant surge before Trump takes office. So they put out these buoys, and they've done this before, and then the Biden administration comes in and removes them because they want the open border. And yeah, you shouldn't need barbed wired buoys to stop illegal immigration. You can stop it with policy. But we had bad policy. So Abbott put out these barbed wire buoys, and then the Biden administration had them removed. Well, now the barbed wire buoys are back. He's also promised Trump a massive plot of land to aid the mass deportation operation. So I guess they're going to open, they've got 1,400 acres in the Rio Grande Valley sector right next to the border. And Abbott and Dawn Buckingham, who's the Texas land commissioner, they've said they're going to volunteer this land to Trump and Homan's deportations operation. So they'll probably build some mass, halfway internment camp where they basically just wait for their ride to their country of origin. Here's my thing, though, because I think about this when I hear the left and the liberal media saying, you can't deport them, it can't be done, or it's impossible. Well, they did come here. You know that? They did come here, so they can go back. What is this logical fallacy that they get into the country illegally, but somehow they just can't leave? That's impossible. There's no way. Well, how'd they get here? How did they get here then? Can't they just go back the same way they came? That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see real harsh rhetoric. I'd like to see really, really harsh policies that makes these people deport themselves. Save us the time. Save us the money. Just deport yourself. However you came in, go right back. Whatever your path to entry was, find the same path to exit. Now, of course, there's a catch there. The entire path to entry was U.S. government funded. The entire path to entry was run by these NGOs and the UN and these church groups, Jewish groups, Catholic groups. So there is an irony. There is an infrastructure to enter the country illegally. There's not to go back home. But force them to admit it. Hey, they got in here. Why can't they go back the same way they came in? Well, because the UN is running the pipeline. Oh, really? Oh, so the conspiracy theorists were right again. Funny how that works. Now, this is a crazy video in New York City. It's a long video. I'm going to play some of it. And I forgot the gentleman's name. We can put up his YouTube channel on the screen. We mentioned him yesterday. He goes to New York City. Nick Shirley, thank you. And do we have the video ready? He confronts migrant gangs in New York City. These are the young guys coming in. They call them like the Diablos or like the young Diablos or future devils or something. Just crazy exchanges that he has in New York City, guys. Go ahead.
So is it true that gangs are inside of the Roosevelt Hotel?
This is
use an automatic gun on
Venezuelan migrants who are potentially dangerous gang members of the gang Tren de Aragua outside of the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. The Roosevelt Hotel is a government-funded migrant shelter for migrants to live once they cross the U.S. border and find themselves in New York City. It has been said that now the Roosevelt Hotel is the center for this Venezuelan gang to operate and recruit new members. And some of these new members are as young as 11 years old. These young gangsters call themselves the Devils of 42nd Street. In this video, I will take you into the heart of this dangerous migrant crisis that is plaguing the city, and I will be visiting many of these migrant shelters. I will be speaking to the migrants themselves, revisiting the infamous Roosevelt Avenue, and once again, I will confront the potential gangsters outside of the Roosevelt Hotel.
You work in security. I just have one question for you. Is Train de Araguas inside of the Roosevelt? Is Train de Araguas inside?
I don't got no answer for you.
I got a question for you. Is Train de Aragua inside the Roosevelt Hotel?
So what?
Is Train de Aragua inside the Roosevelt Hotel?
I don't know what's up.
The gangs? The Venezuelan gangs?
He doesn't know.
You guys not heard of the Diablo on 42nd Street, the 15-year-old?
Work here, bro.
Right here is a van that's dropping people
Yeah, I
off
just
here
work here.
into the
There's
Roosevelt.
gangs and
So
I
people are
protect
still
whatever.
coming into New York City every week, every single day. Around 1,000 more are coming in every single week here inside of New York City. And these people are just got dropped off
I'm
by
gonna try
a
to
van,
reach out
and now
to
they're going to
Nick
get housed
Shirley.
here inside the Roosevelt Hotel. This family just arrived, just like that. They open up the gates and they let the family right on in, and now they're going to get put into the shelter system, and that is just how the process starts. And you would think if they had just crossed over the border, they'd be coming with little equipment, but no, they're coming with luggages full of clothes and other stuff for them to live inside these hotels.
After being denied by security, I went to the back side of the hotel where the migrants that live inside the hotel hang out.
This is the backside of the Roosevelt Hotel, and this is where things get a little bit out of control. This is where a lot of the gang members hang out, and they just hang around. And you can see people here selling food, everything like that. Here on these streets, people are buying lunch and everything like that here as well. ¿Cuánto tiempo ustedes llevan aquí en el Roosevelt? Cámara, ¿no? ¿Y ustedes cuánto tiempo llevan aquí en el Roosevelt? Oh, okay. Yeah, so a lot of these people aren't speaking for whatever reason, but they just sell their food outside here. Do you guys think these people right here, over here, do you think they're Tren de Araguas? Tren de Aragua, the gangs?
So imagine
you know
this.
if
You've
gangs
got,
are inside of the Roosevelt Hotel or not?
I mean, folks, they have more. I mean, we have security. They have like 10 times the security we have for this illegal migrant camp. They have really strict security. You have to have a badge to get in. So you can come into the country without any ID, but then to get into the elite hotel, you have to have your badge. Prove you're a non-citizen. American citizens need not apply.
Canta algo.
Mire la requete linda, parece un cielo estrellado. Como te quiero tener un matrimonio planeado.
Vinimos aquí para hacer algunas preguntas y queremos ver si las noticias están mintiendo y queríamos preguntar a algunos de ustedes algunas preguntas.
Nobody would answer my questions, and out of thin air, a teenager who lives inside the shelter came out flashing all sorts of signs.
This is where it gets crazy.
Yeah. ¿Cómo está? Quédese aquí. Ven acá. Necesitamos la verdad de algunas preguntas que están diciendo en las noticias. Okay, usted? We're going to ask this guy some questions. So is it true that gang members
So
are
eventually
living
that
inside this
young
hotel
guy
right
comes
here?
back,
¿Es la
starts
verdad o es
flashing gang
mentira?
signs again, and then I guess realizes what the interviewer, Nick Shirley, is asking, and goes quiet.
Ya, voy a hacer algunas preguntas a él. ¿Usted vive aquí en Roosevelt? ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué no? Why does nobody want to talk to me out here? Oye, necesito a alguien
Just
para
hanging
contestar
out
mi preguntas.
outside the hotel.
All right, so these guys don't want to talk to me.
Look at
The
what
more I
they've
try
done
to
to
talk
New
to
York
these
City, man.
migrants, the angrier
Just
they
look at
get.
what they've done.
Okay, no necesario que viven aquí.
It's such an insult. It's such an insult to America, our culture,
No quiero nada.
our heritage.
All right, they're yelling at me. Got any problems?
Just keep the
All right, they're
B-roll up
yelling at me
here.
right now. No quiero nada.
And you can do a split screen or whatever. But I mean, just
Okay.
look at it. This is
Don't
New
want any
York
problems
City.
here.
This is supposed to be
No
the
quiero
bastion
ninguna problema.
of America and American lifestyle and culture and metropolitan lifestyle. Here comes the same guy, flashing his gang signs.
Queremos. Oh, wow. Mira. Vimos, no sé si
He's got
usted
his
vio
little
las noticias
gang
el otro
attire
día,
on.
pero dijo que hay un chico que tiene 15 años aquí
Ask
que
us
se
about the
llama
little
Diablo de
devil.
42.
42nd Street.
¿Ha escuchado algo de él?
Maybe that's him. I don't know.
¿Sí o no? Amigo, ¿puede contestar algunas preguntas? Queremos
But see,
saber la
this
verdad.
is what they've
sir.
done.
I don't know speaking English, bro.
Oh, yo hablo
You walk
español.
around New York, it stinks. There's trash everywhere.
Okay, I speak
There's
English.
illegal immigrants everywhere, loitering. And then you have this scaffolding everywhere that just stays up permanently. Scaffolding, you can't. It's just a total eyesore. It's just disgusting. It's all beaten looking and shattered. What a shame. What a shame what they've done to New York City. So, again, that's Nick Shirley reporting. It's just the scenes outside the Roosevelt. But you can only go into the hotel if you're a non-citizen, see? So they have sanctuary cities, and then they have their palaces, too. And then they have their palaces as the Venezuelan gangs are now taking over multiple cities. Jeez. It's just disgusting. But you know what? Hopefully we can put an end to it. I don't know how much more people can tolerate this. By the way, I told you about this a couple weeks ago, or right after Trump got elected. It's now making the mainstream news. Trump-appointed judge blasts blanket pardon plan for J6 riders, says it's beyond frustrating and disappointing if Trump pardons all Capitol riders. So, again, I reported on this simply because I have a little bit of an inside track. I am a January 6th defendant. I talked to a lot of the defendants' attorneys, and so they told me that this was basically what was going on behind the scenes, and now it's starting to come to the top. I said the pressure is to not do pardons at all or not do a blanket pardon. And so Trump was like, well, we'll do a blanket, and then we'll go case by case. But now now it's become such a headache, he's kind of just like throwing his hands in the air. So now he's just saying, well, then let's just do blanket pardons. But then the judges are saying, no, don't do blanket pardons. So here's the problem. Yeah, the corrupt federal government did so much work to incarcerate and charge mostly completely innocent people, certainly not violent criminals, certainly didn't deserve the persecution. And so, but that's the idea here is, the government employees and the U.S. prosecutors and attorneys and the judges and the court's time and the people's dime, we can't just pardon them all after this work. Well, it was work that should have never been done. That's the problem. So if you did go case by case, you start going through those cases today. You start going through those cases 2 weeks ago. But you know what? If you do a blanket pardon, then I don't even just blanket pardon them. Just go ahead, just do it. You blanket prosecuted. So now we blanket pardon. And yeah, there probably were some people that assaulted a police officer and maybe deserved a little time. But way too many innocent people are rotting in prisons. Way too many innocent people were prosecuted. And so maybe that's the move. Just don't even waste time going case by case. Just do the blanket pardon. Just get it done. Just rip the Band-Aid off and just get it done. But that's the government, that's the bureaucracy protecting itself now. Oh, no, we can't. No, all the work, all the manpower, all the money. Well, it was all wasted. Not our fault. Your fault, not ours. You wasted it. You put innocent people behind bars, not us. So just blanket pardon it. Just do it. Just do it day one. Just get it done. Do the right thing. Get it done. Innocent men and women, veterans, fathers, grandparents are rotting in prisons, totally undeservedly. Just blanket pardon them. So originally I was like, maybe you have to do case by case. Screw it. Blanket pardon, day one. Don't waste any more time. Blanket pardon, get it done. Free the J6 prisoners.
Most people that research supplements and that are into health know that Irish sea moss and its benefits are documented and incredible. Well, our sponsor, the AlexJonesStore.com, happened to be able to get one of the top suppliers with the highest rated Irish sea moss to give them the authorization to private label it. So now it's Alex Jones Ultimate Sea Moss, exclusively available at the AlexJonesStore.com. It is the ultimate superfood. The iodine, the trace minerals, the elements, the vitamins that are in this are incredible. They give you instant energy, instant focus, but as you take it for a few weeks, you feel the stamina, the libido, the mental clarity. It is a superfood. It is concentrated. So get Alex Jones Ultimate Sea Moss exclusively discounted at the AlexJonesStore.com. And listen to this. One bottle is 40% off. 3 bottles is 55% off, and again, 1 bottle is 40%. Get yours today at thealexshowstore.com, and I thank you for keeping us on the air.
Delving deep into the heart of globalist plans, it's Owen Schroyer.
All right, there was a hearing yesterday on the unaccompanied children coming across the border and the 300,000 missing children. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene in that hearing discussing these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The root cause of migration is a federal government that has legalized an invasion into this country. That's the root cause. And you talk about treason, I can tell you right now, I consider that treason against American citizens. This has been an invasion in this country, and the cartels have benefited by tens of billions of dollars. Mass deportations cannot happen fast enough. Not fast enough. Not for the cartels, terrorists, gangs, and criminals that have made billions and billions of dollars, and children have been the biggest victims of it. Human trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. In 2021, Georgia had one of the highest number of cases per capita that were reported through trafficking hotlines. Approximately 1/3 of all human trafficking victims are children. The United States is one of the top destinations for human trafficking and is among the largest consumers of child sex. That is sick. The average age of entry into the commercial sex market is 12 years old. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been complicit, just as you testified, Mr. Carroll, in making the United States federal government the world's largest child sex trafficking organization in modern history. My God, what has happened to our country? This administration has adhered to our enemies and allowed cartels and coyotes to make around $13 billion a year in human trafficking alone. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Mayorkas have allowed over 500,000 unaccompanied alien children to cross our border. As Mr. Carroll testified, the probability that thousands of these alien children are being raped at this very moment is 100%. Ms. Rodas, you further highlighted that when we learned in February 23 that 85,000 of these children were missing, zero action was taken to rescue the children, and zero action was taken to prevent other children from being lost in slave labor, commercial sex, organ harvesting, and other unspeakable evils. I don't care if the organ harvesting happened in Mexico. If the buyers are in the United States, we got a serious problem. And consequently, more than a year later, in July 2024, we learned that this administration has lost track of more than 320,000 children. How on earth do we do that? The failures, that's how. These are the results of Democrat policies. The Democrats want to claim moral superiority and accuse us of family separation policies. Well, they are the party of child sex trafficking, and the American people spoke out about that on the election. Surrendering control of our border to the cartels, expediting vetting processes, and refusing to share data with law enforcement so they can dismantle the trafficking infrastructure are the policies of Democrats. More than 100 children being released to the same address in Austin, Texas, is a policy of the Democrats. Mr. Carroll, in your documentary, What is Treason?, there's some very heart-wrenching claims about the trafficking of unaccompanied children. Several of the most disturbing claims we heard are religious organizations and NGOs are operating as co-conspirators. These organizations are used as the pipeline to traffic the children to the end abuser in many instances. Other disturbing claims made include pedophilia rings, purchasing children, as well as organ harvesting. Can you please talk in specifics about the evidence and finding of your research that have led you to these conclusions?
That's a great question, because the federal government does not have the ability, the capacity, or the manpower to move 30 million people that have crossed the border in the last 4 years into America. They can't. So who do they partner with? The federal government partner with the NGOs, all cloaked under the umbrella of religion.
And they're paying them with American tax dollars, by the way.
We are talking about this is
Yeah,
Joe
and
Biden's.
I think beyond deportations, there should be criminal investigations and charges for everyone involved.
The beacon of truth in a world of deceit. It's the War Room with Owen Schroyer.
We got some big stories to talk about with my next guest, Brianna Sagdahl from the Beef Initiative, beefinitiative.com. And she's got a story there I want to highlight. I want to talk about this new methane emissions attack that they're trying to go after cows with. I imagine that would be right up the alley of the Beef Initiative. I want to talk about, we'll get kind of back into what we talked about last time she was on with the FEMA land grabs in North Carolina, as we have some more information on that as well. She wants to talk about this, recovering from the Biden-Harris administration, from beefnews.org, America the Titanic, managing after impact with the disastrous Biden-Harris iceberg. Brianna joins me now. So, Brianna, what do we need to do? What's on your radar as far as repairing America post-Biden-Harris?
Thank you so much for having me back on, Owen. I really appreciate it. And yes, this is what our policy document outlines, America the Titanic. Not only do we expose the whole of government approach implemented through executive action by the Biden administration, but we outline and identify key executive orders in this policy document that we are asking the incoming Trump administration to revoke on day one. And in honesty, we have hit the iceberg. America is the Titanic. And how this is managed moving forward will determine the future of our country.
Why is it that they go after the farmers so much, do you think? Is it about centralizing the food supply? Is it because control the food, control the population? I mean, they always want to try to tie it all into climate change, but there's no doubt, Trump has been very pro-farmer. I mean, you come from a farming family. What is kind of is it really that clear cut as far as Trump's support for the farmers versus what the government bureaucracies have done to the farmers in recent years?
Well, certainly, I think that Trump has been very supportive, but I think what's most important right now is to hone in on the centralization of authority that's occurred with the Biden administration. So, going back to the policy document, America the Titanic, I think that this is an absolutely jaw-dropping story that most Americans have no idea about. I don't think half of Congress is even aware of what has occurred. There were key executive orders that were passed, but this is the first time in American history where a president not only directed each and every single administrative agency to abide by the policy recommendations of an interagency task force using a whole, and when I say whole of government approach, what I mean by that is literally each and every single federal agency that serves at the pleasure of the president was directed as to how they would allocate every dime appropriated by Congress. And as these programs began to roll out, then the Biden administration directed these agencies to create an equity team so that not only would the programs be interoperable between agencies, but each one of these programs would be rolled out through the lens of like critical theory, for example, or essentially communist ideology, collectivist mindsets, and ways to penalize thought criminals, right? But I think to answer your question, Owen, why is it that governments go after farmers and ranchers in particular? It has to do with land use. It has to do with resource management. And yes, it absolutely has to do with controlling the food supply. But if I were an enemy of the United States and I wanted to take down this country without firing a single shot, I would fund NGOs to become part of the transition team and then implement a set of ideological guidelines, such as what has occurred under the Biden administration, in order to effectively impact or negatively impact the combat readiness of America's troops. And that is exactly what we have seen over the last 4 years. Our food supply has been decimated. Our ability to can and process food has been decimated. Our critical infrastructure has been attacked. Our combat readiness of our troops, our munitions, and even down to our submarines, right, have been sent out. We are in very, very dangerous territory right now as a country. Our borders are shot. Citizenship has been redefined, and the vast majority of resource allocation has gone into the federal procurement, or excuse me, the federal acquisition of private property and the relocation of American citizens into the Built Back Better smart infrastructure grid for absolute security and control. What has happened over the last 4 years, Owen, is an absolute coup. And I will add one last thing here before I land my plane. What has happened under the Biden administration has definitively proven your reporting and Alex Jones' reporting absolutely correct. This has been an attempt by a global structure to vertically integrate and centralize authority to the UN, to the World Health Organization, and it's been funded by groups such as the WEF, for example, and so forth and so on.
Well, I've always said that it's hard to believe the things that, let's just say for this conversation, it's hard to believe the things that InfoWars reports on or Alex has been talking about for years or some of the things I talk about until you experience it yourself. It's a really hard thing to believe that this is the world, this is the country we live in until you experience it yourself, and then all of a sudden it becomes real to you. And I explain that sometimes to, let's say, doubters or naysayers in the subjects of discussion that we have here. I say, hey, look, live long enough, you'll find out that this is the real world that we're talking about here. It just takes some time, but you'll get there eventually, especially to the younger people. But when I look at this, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, in all fairness, I thought you guys were absolutely nuts, right? But then I saw it in policy. And for people like myself who are policy minded and who need to see it in actual rule changes and stamped across each federal administrative agency, right? It's there. It's in the Federal Register. And everybody, I highly encourage absolutely everybody to go through and read the Federal Register, start looking at the Justice 40 allocations and the federal plan, the unified agenda for equitable long-term recovery and resilience, because this is the coup, essentially, that has been outlined. And it was 101 NGOs that were part of the Biden transition team that implemented this entire structure through cross-sectional framework called Vital Conditions. And this was created by external non-governmental organizations funded by the World Economic Forum and the IMF.
So it's like a form of climate alarmism.
It is not just climate alarmism, but it's a combination of climate alarmism and a concept of cutting someone's legs out from underneath them to give someone else a more equitable opportunity, right? So it's this arbitrary ranking of humanity through government alone policies and capricious rule changes and redefinitions of our law in order to affect not only a centralization of authority, but in absolute central redistribution of wealth and a consolidation of not only resources, but generational wealth all across the United States, just right up into a select few.
Who do we need to get this document to? I mean, Trump is still building his cabinet. I mean, You got Lee Zeldin at the EPA, might be relevant. I forget the gentleman that he appointed that comes from the fracking industry. Is it going to be the Bureau of Land Management? I mean, who needs to dig into this? Because I just think about America at large. We don't really talk about it, but, I mean, we've got some of the richest farmland in the world. I mean, you could argue that the United States has the best farmland and the most potential for food production in the entire world, and it just kind of gets lost on us. But, I mean, really, we should be trying to build our food production. We should be, I mean, regenerative farming should be taught in schools. I mean, it should be a concept that everybody understands. Plus, it's great for the environment. Who do we get this document to? How do we get people to understand the importance of farming and how much it's been under attack from this evil bureaucracy, this management class, not just the last 4 years, but really for more than a decade?
Well, so the president himself needs to see this document, and his team needs to review our recommendations for executive orders to overturn. These executive orders identify very specific and very strategic aspects of authority that the Biden administration either seized or delegated, and in doing so, authorized the creation of these plans to be built out. So we have isolated, I think, 4 or 5 key executive orders that absolutely must be revoked on day one. In addition, we are recommending that this administration direct all agencies to immediately pause funding until further notice. So Congress has got, there's probably about another, I think there's several $1 billion that are left in the pipeline right now. And Congress could feasibly stop that and reallocate those funds into not only decentralizing support throughout the U.S. to small farms and small family farms, but also help to reindustrialize at the local level. One of the most egregious aspects of this plan is if you look at it and you line it up with the proposed federal acquisitions of land, and you line that up with the 2024 election map. I would say it points to needing further analysis on whether this plan was to engage in economic warfare and reallocate the vast majority of red voters into densely populated blue cities in an effort to redistrict and drown out the voice of rural America. I think that absolutely needs to be analyzed.
Well, let me tell you, I do a lot of this research into gerrymandering, and you're not far off from the truth. And of course, their reasoning is they're fighting racism. Their reasoning is they're doing it because of racism. You can't have a rural area that's a majority white population and then a metropolitan area that's a majority black population. You have to balance it out. And so they do this gerrymandering, and that's how they steal probably, conservatively 10 to 20 seats in the House every election cycle, maybe more now. I mean, some of these districts that they have in cities like Houston they'll make you fall out of your chair. They're so absolutely absurd. So 100% that goes on.
How does that work with the Native American reservations then? Anyways, honestly, I think that does beg for further review and analysis, because there are many in rural America who are of all different skin colors, nationalities, backgrounds, etc., and they're not all Democrat. I mean, rural America used to vastly be a Democrat stronghold because of subsidies and so forth. But as this administration and the one prior to it, the Obama administration, began engaging in what Charlotte Twite referred to as participatory fascism, rural America has really been centralized under monopolist corporations. And it's put in, at this point, I think we're looking at somewhere between 37 to 40,000 family farms that are going going under each and every year. We've lost over 140,000 family farms in this country alone. And what that does to local economies is absolutely devastating, rural economies. Yeah, I think Congress needs to immediately start looking at allocating these funds, cease allocations on their current trajectory, and then assess how we can invest these dollars back into our country to reindustrialize, immediately begin working on security and infrastructure such as processing of meat, processing of vegetables, and canning and distribution and actual storage. We don't even have the storage capability right now to feed even 1% of our nation. And all of this harkens back to centralization over land use and zoning. And this is largely where we start getting into the issues with FEMA, for example, and HUD, and what we're seeing in North Carolina and Tennessee, right, following FEMA's awful disaster response, which is not a mistake. This is all part of that federal plan for equitable long-term recovery and resilience. And if people go through and they research on the Federal Register, you'll quickly find that the way that FEMA is responding in North Carolina, for example, it was all outlined in their rule changes, from forced placement rules to the new 50% rule to the 8-step guide to determining who is allowed to rebuild and when. I mean, even yesterday in the House Oversight Committee, AOC was referring to the maps and how we haven't remapped floodplains in over 20 years. This is an attempt to remap entire areas of the United States for the sake of quote unquote climate change. And if you look at, there it is right there, if you look at the strategic buyout plan for North Carolina, it outlines this plan very, very clearly.
Well, here's the problem. It's like they say the road to hell is built with good intentions. The Environmental Protection Agency, yeah, okay, we all want to protect the environment, but what ends up happening is these leftist ideologues get in control of it, and they justify overreach, communism, in the name of equity and fairness. And so that's really what this comes down to. I mean, FEMA is really no different. Oh, we want an emergency, we want an emergency department for Americans after a hurricane or an earthquake. We want to be able to have a piggy bank that we can go into and help Americans. But then what happens? Again, these leftist progressive ideologues get in control of it, and they turn it into, like they turn it into everywhere else, some sort of action plan of equity and fairness. And so it just, everything goes down that pipeline when these ideologues get in control of it. And so you no longer have an environmental protection agency. You no longer have a federal emergency management agency. You have leftist ideologues that just get into these programs and access to these purses and just use it for their ideology, and it doesn't end up serving the original purpose of these agencies. In fact, let's talk about the recent news we have with FEMA. People are still living in tents in North Carolina, and we have more details. One individual has been reporting on the scene, and that's Matt Van Swall, and he's explaining, and he gets into the 50% rule. You mentioned that. We talked about this last time you were on. You're living in a tent. Your property's been completely washed away. You still own your land, but you're basically living in a tent on your land. FEMA finally makes it out to you, and they say, okay, well, we can't really do anything for you because of the new rules and regulations, but if you sell us your land for like 2%, the actual property value, if you sell us your land, then we can give you a new trailer to live in. So you're living in a tent, it's cold, it's windy, it's rainy, certainly not a good living circumstance. And FEMA just says, well, if you just give us your land, sell it to us for 2% of its value, then we'll take care of you. But if you say, no, I'm not doing that, they say, oh, okay, sorry, we can't help you. I mean, it's unbelievable that this is what's going on. I mean, that is like a mafia shakedown that FEMA's engaged in.
Well, and it's not just, oh, sorry, we can't help you. It is also, sorry, we're not going to help you. In addition to, you're not going to be able, or we're not going to allow you to rebuild on your own property. Oh, and guess what? If you owe on a mortgage, now that mortgage will have a forced placement of NFIP or FEMA flood insurance that is now mandatory for you to pay. And if you cannot obtain flood insurance privately, then your mortgage, your lender is required by federal law to force place insurance through FEMA and then tack it on to your principal and interest. So not only are you your monthly payments now going, from maybe $600 to maybe $900 a month or something along those lines, right? But you can't even rebuild on that property. It is a form of economic warfare that's being waged in an effort to move people. There is the carrot, which is the here's your tax assessed value. Speaking of which, there was the most recent rule change through HUD and FEMA where they just decided that they don't even have to use appraised value. They don't have to use fair market value. They redefined that to just market value in order to get through these payment processes more quickly. So here's the carrot, which is this, tax assessed value for whatever value we say it's worth. And then there's the stick,
which is illegitimate.
If you choose to stay, we will tax you to death. We will force you to pay significant amounts, and we will make sure that you're not allowed to rebuild because it's against.
And by the way, the government is famous for doing this. Like with tax appraisal values, they'll overappraise your house by 10%, 15% just to raise taxes on your property. I mean, they're famous for doing crap like this. So really, it all just comes down to we have to limit the government. It's too bad. We can't have government that doesn't become corrupt. I think that we've found that out. We've learned that throughout time, and now this current U.S. government is the exact same way. Brianna, I've got 60 seconds left. Any closing words?
Yes, please get in touch with us at the Beef Initiative, specifically if you are having issues staying on your land, if you are feeling bullied. Please get in touch with us. We're putting together a legal fund and putting together legal defense to help people on the ground. In addition, if you are with the Trump administration, please reach out to me. You can find me at Brianna9 on X. Thank you so much.
And is beefinitiative.com a great way for people to get in touch with you too?
Absolutely. And make sure that you support our ranchers while you're there, and find your local rancher and shake their hands.
Make farming great again. How about that? We need a Make Farming Great Again hat. All right, Brianna Sagdahl, thank you so much from the Beef Initiative. All right, when we come back, we've got another story, folks. This one is just grotesque. We've been following this story for some time, and we've got a very devastating update.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
A few weeks ago, when I saw Elon Musk in Pennsylvania with Trump at Butler, and he had that dark MAGA hat on, I said, we've got to have our own. And we've come out with it. Yeah, we can put one out that just says "Make America Great Again," and that's available at thealexshowstore.com. But I personally like this one, Murdered Out. It fits great, and it funds the InfoWar and supports President Trump. And if you don't like Murdered Out, we got it white on black. So get yours right now, and a bunch of other great designs of hoodies and T-shirts and top-of-the-line supplements that all fund the Second American Revolution at thealexjonesstore.com. Let me show you a few more of these. Now that the FDA admits fluoride does lower your IQ and give you cancer and infertility, it's a great time to wear one of these beautiful hats, and it's a great way to start a conversation and warn people. Here's the classic Make America Great Again Murdered Out, and we've got the Save the Frogs, over 50 designs, all at thealexjonesstore.com, and it keeps us on air, and it spreads the word. Please go to alexjonesstore.com and get your Patriot gear.
The War Room. Infowars.com/show.
Making talk radio great again. This is The War Room with Owen Schroyer.
We've been following a story here on the InfoWars War Room for quite some time. I believe over the course of multiple years now, and that is the story of Jeff Younger and his boys and their mother, which started here in Texas, made its way to the California court system, and has now reached a diabolical conclusion. And so Jeff Younger rejoins the show once again for the latest update. Jeff, it's almost unfathomable what you've gone through, and it's now unconscionable, the decision that has been made by the California courts, and I guess the Texas courts as well. And so you're here today to give us an update. And I mean, I don't even know how to properly set this up other than to warn other Americans, fathers. I mean, after what you've been through, first give us an update on the conclusion or any updates following the recent court decision in California. And then it's just like, I don't know. How do you find a message in the aftermath of this, Jeff Younger?
Well, the judge in California has stripped me of all parental rights. I have all contact must be supervised, even phone contact. And he gave full authority to my ex-wife to chemically castrate my son. I expect that will happen this week, actually, immediately.
So just for a brief background, again, why don't you just give us like a 2-minute brief background, the beginning of this saga, and then the decision in the California court?
Well, my ex-wife started transitioning my son when he was 3 years old, tried to transition him to a girl. The school helped her and transitioned my son behind my back. I didn't know it. My son is always presented as a boy to me, but he only presents as a girl with his mom. He told me he did that because his mom didn't love him if he wasn't a girl. We had a 2019 trial. I won 50-50 custody and a check on all medical procedures to stop her from doing this stuff. Then the liberal judges in Dallas County, Texas, moved my son into the 301st District Court with Judge Mary Brown, who systematically stripped me of my parental rights instead of implementing the jury decision for 50-50 custody, and eventually let my ex-wife move to California. I went up to the Texas Supreme Court, where Justice Blacklock, I call him Black-Hearted Blacklock, ruled absurdly that my son was in no more danger of being chemically castrated in California than he would be in Texas, and allowed my ex-wife to move to California. I had to go to a trial in California, and they stripped me of all my parental rights and are going to chemically castrate him forthwith.
Now, I've been in this twilight zone of a legal situation in the civil courts, in the criminal courts. I haven't dealt with this in the family courts. I can only imagine it hits, it all kind of hits on a different level. This one a lot more personally, as it's obviously not just impacting you. It's literally impacting your son as well in this case. What is that like to be in that situation and you feel like you're in a Looney Tune land Twilight Zone episode that is just, it's like you can't even believe that this is happening?
Here's the best way I can describe it to you. In family court, all expressions of masculinity are weaponized as violence. So what you have to do as a father is you have to sit there and be totally calm while you watch somebody systematically sexually abuse your child. And if you act out in any way, you'll lose your child forever. That's what it's like. Imagine what you would feel if you had to sit there over a 10-year period and watch your son be slowly sexually abused. That's what it's like.
And it really is a torturous thing. I mean, that is going against every instincts you have as a man, as a father, yes, to have to sit there and do it. Going through that for, Elon Musk was a major political shift in his perspective too, when he had to see that happen to his son.
Yes.
And I mean, he basically said in an interview that his son is dead. And I guess that's why they say it's, dead naming when you call your son by their birth name instead of their girl name.
Yes.
And so you said all your contact communication, it all has to be monitored now. You haven't ever been charged with a crime, have you?
No. She made a false claim of domestic violence. I went to a criminal trial with a jury, and they came back in less than 10 minutes with a not guilty verdict. The judge actually censored them for insulting my ex-wife because they were mad at her, because it was such a joke of a prosecution. So I've never been convicted of any crime. There's been no findings of abuse or neglect of any kind by the courts. I've never had any run-ins with the law. You have to go back to the 1980s to even get a traffic ticket with me. So I'm a rule follower, basically. But the thing that they just can't abide is that I will not say my son's a girl, and I will not raise my son as a girl. And they just can't abide that. They're just not going to let me do it. So
that's why you're now having limited access to your son, or whatever access you get is supposed to be monitored. It's simply because you're not in agreement to this ideology of trans kids or gender change or gender fluidity.
Yes. And the judge specifically in the ruling, this recent ruling, cites that I have, quote, relentlessly pursued a political agenda against gender affirming care. And that's accurate. I have been relentless, and I have been against gender affirming care. And I told the judge point blank to his face in court that I would always be relentlessly pursuing opposition to gender affirming care, and it would never stop. In fact, I told the judge that since my sons live in California, I'm going to outlaw it in California just like I did in Texas. And the judge mentions this in the ruling and essentially says that if your politics says you don't believe in gender affirming care and you relentlessly pursue those politics, you can't have your kids.
Is there another story like this that you're aware of?
There are lots of other stories. In most of these stories, fathers don't speak up.
So that's the difference here, because I don't hear much about this. I've followed your story. Mm-hmm. Your story has gotten some press coverage, not as much as it's needed, quite frankly. I mean, this should be a huge story. I mean, folks, we're talking about the family court system, and I'll just say, for sake of this argument, potentially a bitter ex-wife, whether it applies to this story or not, Jeff can decide to apply it or not. I'm just saying you could have a situation now where a bitter ex-wife and a court system can take your kid, take your custody of the kid, and do gender transition medical procedures. I mean, this is a pretty big story. This is huge. This should be national news. This is a dangerous precedent. They can take them to California and do all this, just like they did to you. You're the only one I've heard of. You say there are other stories, but the fathers are afraid to speak up, or is that the case?
Yeah, they've been put under gag orders by the court, which don't let them tell you what's happening. My case in California was illegally sealed. There's only one reason you can seal a case in California, and that's for a parentage action. That's when you don't know who the parent is of a child. They declared my case a parentage action, even though the paternity of my children is not in dispute. They did that so they could seal the records. You can't see the records. You can't see the transcripts. You can't see the filings. You can't see the medical records where they're teaching my son that he can save his sperm and bank his sperm and have a child as a woman later in life. Like, you can't see all that stuff. They've kept it secret. So a lot of these fathers get put under gag orders, and they're really scared of breaking those gag orders. And I'm just not scared of breaking these gag orders. I'm not going to follow illegal orders and mandates from the government. I'm never going to do it. And so they can't shut me up. And so they took my kids because they couldn't shut me up.
Wait a second. How are they claiming your son can put his sperm in a sperm bank? Your son is still young, correct?
Yes. They're telling him that they can remove his testicles, slice his testicles open, and harvest sperm out of them.
How old is your son?
12.
They're telling this. They've said this to a 12-year-old boy.
They recommended it to him and talked to him in depth about it. He said he wanted it.
So that's almost it's a strange admission, really, I would say, in the court proceedings to say, hey, you might regret this later. Do you want to salvage what's left of your manhood? I mean, that's basically what they've said to your son, who is, I mean, maybe still prepubescent. I mean, he's right around his teenage years. This is insanity.
It's total insanity. And unfortunately, it's being subsidized by judges. And it's one of the things that, the Alex Jones case, the Trump cases, my case, a few other high-profile cases, has got to demonstrate to the American people is that the design of the judiciary in America is fundamentally flawed. And the people that inhabit those offices are fundamentally flawed people. We just simply have to find a way to coerce these judges to do the right thing. Because right now, I would actually call America a critarchy. It's ruled by these judges. Every aspect of our lives is ruled by judges. I've been under discovery, and you understand what that's like. I've been under discovery for a decade in this case. Every single financial transaction, every credit card transaction, every cash transaction is scrutinized by the courts. I have no financial privacy, no personal privacy. I can't move. I can't sell my house. I've done all this stuff because of judges. And fundamentally, we have to take discretion away from judges. We need to change our laws.
Well, unfortunately, what we really have, too, is just a dangerous ideology. And we're supposed to have a process in this country where the judges, and we put our faith in the system, that they will put away their politics, put away their ideologies, put away their own leanings, and be a fair, neutral judge. Mm-hmm. We don't have that. I mean, let's not pretend we do. We don't have that. You might have that with a conservative judge. You might get a shot. You might get a chance if your judge is a conservative or a Republican. They might have some integrity to actually do that. Not with a liberal. No. I mean, look, I would say, let me be fair. With a conservative judge, you probably have 90% chance that they'll actually be able to act with integrity. With a liberal judge, you've got a 90% chance that they have no integrity and they put their activism and their liberal ideology ahead of whatever's going to be done in that case. That's from my experience personally. That's from my experience interviewing people that have been through it, interviewing yourself, and seeing the results in these cases. And that applies basically to every walk of life these days, whether it's a teacher, a judge, a U.S. attorney. It just goes down the line. These leftist ideologues are so radical now that they put their ideology and activism as their top priority above whatever their actual job description is. They'll always be a liberal ideologue, a progressive activist, before whatever their intended job description and what they're supposed to be doing is actually concerned. So you've had to deal with this firsthand. Now, I hate to even ask you this and, choose to answer it or not, but this is a big story, and I just want to do this interview properly. Could you have basically sacrificed your son to the trans agenda and not had to go through this and still gotten access? Could you have said, fine, I'll let my son be a girl and just lived life that way and not had to deal with this?
I'd have 50-50 custody right now if I'd have done that. I'd have 50-50 custody, no child support, and my life would be just normal. Look, Owen, it's not just in court and seeing my son. I was fired from my company for talking about this subject in public. I'm basically not hireable by high-tech companies which have liberal HR departments. I can't get a job right now. It's affected every aspect of my life, but I don't care. There's no way that a man can stand up and let his kid be castrated. And I will say this too, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I don't mean it offensively, but I think this is the most morally obvious question since slavery. Like there's no other side to this issue, and it might split the country just like slavery did. It's literally that clear cut and that emotional.
I've never heard it presented that way, and I think that it's wholly accurate. it really is the most clear-cut moral issue since slavery, except I guess the historical difference here would be, there was a whole period of dealing with slavery and the moral consequences of it that led up to, let's just say, the Civil War,
right?
Versus what we're dealing with now with trans kids. I mean, this is a new concept. This is a new. It's like, wait a second, do we have to go through trans kids for decades or centuries now? Is this going to become normalized? Can we stop this now? I think you're 100% right. I would say that this is the most morally clear issue since slavery. Trans kids should not exist. I mean, look, we shouldn't even have to have this discussion, but okay, here we are in the clown world having it. When you're above 18, then whatever, do whatever you want, right? We have plenty of laws that we already have some precedent, smoking cigarettes, getting tattoos, all this other stuff. I mean, I can't even imagine, and I've got this other story about this parent that let her kid walk down the street that's now being arrested.
That's a horrible story.
I'm sure you saw that in Georgia. So it's a different thing, but it's kind of the same thing as the government getting involved. But it's just like, if you come home from work one day and your kid is smoking a pack of cigarettes and you say, hey, you can't smoke those, what, now you're going to go to court? I mean, right. Your kid comes home and he's got a makeshift, somehow he learned how to make a tattoo gun, and him and his friends are tattooing each other with a tattoo gun. You say, hey, you can't do that. You're going to go to court? I mean, it's crazy because it's all ideological. And that's what this is. It's an insane ideology. You try to make sense of it. You can't. And then you go down this dark path and you just think, do we have people that want access to children? Do we have an agenda that wants to stop the population from growing? I mean, how do you try to make sense of this in your head?
So I think I'm actually working on a book about this subject, about answering that question. Mainly I started just to answer my own questions because I'm perplexed by it too. I think what is happening is there is a concerted attack on the middle class in America. And it's two-pronged. It's economic, but they also want to break up families because it's generational families. I think what they've decided is that voting patterns follow the generational patterns in middle class families, and they want to break families up so that their voting patterns change. Why is that? It's because I've lived in 11 different countries. The only place in the world where people want free speech, they don't want free speech in the UK. Canada says free speech is an affirmative evil. They don't want free speech in Australia. There's no free speech anywhere in the world. There's no Second Amendment rights anywhere else in the world. People don't know this. There's no Fifth Amendment rights. In other countries, you have to incriminate yourself if you're asked questions in court, or you can be, that itself is a felony crime. So your right to a lawyer is not preserved in other countries. All of these rights that we have in the United States are very unique to the United States. And it presents a conundrum for the globalist agenda because the United States, because of these protections, can't enact a censorship regime as easily in America as it can elsewhere. And if you look inside of America, our elites don't want free speech. Our elites don't want gun rights. Our elites don't want you to have your Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights. They definitely don't want Ninth and 10th Amendment rights for the states. Our lower classes are all beholden to the government. They don't care about these rights. So it turns out it's only the middle class in the United States that is the bulwark of human rights for the entire world.
Yep.
And I think that's why they're going after them.
It's funny.
The middle class elects the global leaders of America, which direct the agenda of the world.
It's a conversation that needs to be had. It's one of the hardest questions to answer, to try to figure out how we got into these clown world, Looney Tune land, Twilight Zone situations. That's interesting. I'm just learning now as well as the audience that he's writing a book on this. I'll be interested to see how that goes. It's funny you bring that up. Today is the anniversary of New Jersey becoming the first state to ratify the Bill of Rights. You just went down some of those Bill of Rights. Today's actually the anniversary of New Jersey being the first state to do that. So I don't think people understand how important that document is. And, when you put it in the framework that you just did, hey, you don't have these guarantees in any other legal document around the world, but not just in legal practice, the cultural idea too. And so maybe they figure if they can tear down the culture of supporting the Bill of Rights and freedom, that then they can tear down the legal framework of it as well.
Yeah, there's a really good analysis by guys like Hayek and Mises on what actually is law. And law and statutes are two different things. Let me give you an example. If you get pulled over in a 55 mile an hour zone, and the cop says, well, you were going 55.025 miles per hour, and that's over the speed limit, and I'm going to give you a ticket. And you said, well, I'm going to go to a jury trial. I don't think any jury would convict you, because the real law is the customary practices of the people. And in the customary practices of the people, it's plus or minus 5 miles an hour, roughly, right? So the real law is written in the customs and hearts of the people and not in the statutes. And these globalist fiends absolutely know that. And that's why they have in our schools the social and emotional learning programs to push all this LGBT stuff and to push the globalist political agenda. It's to change the attitudes and beliefs of the people, to change the cultural pathways that are the real laws that people follow.
It's so crazy. Again, in conclusion here, there's the Daily Wire headline: "Goodbye, boys. Texas dad says California judge gave ex-wife authority to castrate my son." 20 years ago. I'd say probably 20 years ago, maybe 30. Let's say 20, though. It was 20 short years ago. If you were in family court and a parent said, I want to transgender my kid, whether that be with, chemicals and drugs or a literal scalpel, they would be the ones that lose custody. They would be the ones that would have to forfeit custody at that point, probably get sent to an asylum or institutionalized for such an idea. Now it's the opposite in two short decades. It's totally insane. Jeff, your story is very important. I hope more people are aware of it. I mean, I don't know if there's any legal hope for you in the future. Maybe there's some other options for you. But this is a serious case, and I can't even imagine. But you seem to have developed quite a bit of patience. I know you've had to make a lot of tough decisions throughout this journey. And hopefully we can maybe turn into something positive and get this thing turned around. So, Jeff, thank you for sharing your story with us. And whenever your book is ready, or if there's any other twists and turns in this story, you let me know.
Will do. Thank you, Owen.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Wow. Oh, man. I mean, what do you even say? What do you even say to such a story? 20 years ago, it would have been the exact opposite outcome. How did we get here? Crazy radical liberalism. Crazy radical liberalism. And this is a test case for learning, folks. Make no mistake about it. This is a test case for what the leftist, liberal, progressive ideologues will do when they get any power at all. They will do this to your children, and then they will do a complete reverse of reality and say, no, the parent that wants to castrate the kid gets custody. 20 short years, folks. That's all it took for these radicals to do this.
Now, the one thing I want you to do, if I could ask you to do anything for America and Alex and this network and this crew, the one thing I would ask you to do, go to thealexjonesstore.com right now and sign up for Alex Jones VIP Club. It's $30 a month, but you get $40 in store credit. So if you're going to buy a $35 shirt, you might as well sign up for the VIP Club so that you can get that extra $10 and just get the shirt that you want. That is going to ensure that we can fund this operation, fund the next operation, and ensure that Alex always has a voice. They can try to steal his identity. They can try to steal his business. They can try to steal America. They can try to sacrifice humanity in nuclear genocide. But if you go to thealexjonesstore.com and sign up for Alex Jones VIP Club, They'll never take away our voice. They'll never take away our freedom. They'll never take away free speech, and we can save America together. Please go now and be the reason Alex Jones will always be on the air.